In today's episode of the Cannon Podcast, join us as we break down the secret behind Arsenal's attack, analyse the evolution of Bukayo Saka, discuss Arsenal's potential big money forward signing, and analyse how Arsenal could win the Premier League title.
Yes, guys, welcome back to the Cannon Podcast. We're here after a sensational victory at the Emirates Stadium, 6-0. Now, I was lucky enough to be in the stadium, but you guys watched it on TV. Talk to me, George. 6 goals. How is the Arsenal attack evolving? You know, as I saw in the first half, unfortunately, you know, it was very bad for me. We lost on field tilt. So I wasn't happy with it. I was sat there thinking, listen, man, this can't be. But 5 goals in the first half, first English side. Yeah, first English side in Champions League history to ever do so. So, George, talk to me. How is the Arsenal attack evolving?
I don't know about evolving. I think we have to talk about kind of a different game state, you know, and we have to talk about the differences that we face on a regular basis versus what we may face in Europe. One thing I will say, though, it's the first time that we've seen that front five all season. We've seen that front line before, we've seen that midfield before, but never has that front five played together. And it's not as though that's just a magic card to suddenly say that's what's needed to then spring open the attack. But it does kind of go to show you when we have our first choice 11, we have options. We have options to increase attacking fluidity. And it is an attacking lineup. I don't think it's used for everybody. And ironically, it was a pretty brave call to use it against Lens. And I don't think that, Lens for themselves, they're not just a technical team. They're very physical. And they have one of the best defensive records in Europe. So to produce this kind of attacking performance against them is special. I just think a lot of it has to do, you have to balance it kind of with, on the day we were brilliant. You can't account for that sometimes. Sometimes, your team performs brilliantly. And I think that's what really happened. We clicked. We got a lot of confidence in players. But then subsequently, we also didn't face the same kind of spatial restrictions that we find in the Premier League. That's just a fact. I mean, Arsenal faced the deepest lines in Europe's top 5 leagues. And we know that because on average, we face deeper blocks in the Premier League more consistently. And I had a really kind of sarcastic tweet out on X that said, this is why people play deep lines against Arsenal, because you do give Arsenal space. They're able to rip through you. And I remember on the watch along, I'd love to get your guys' opinion on this. I kind of proposed the question, are Arsenal the best transition team in the world? That's something that I've been debating with for a while. I feel like we haven't got the sample to really sit there and say yes or no quite yet. But when we go and we're able to see what these front three can do, when they're in form, they're fit. I think I can't really think of many front lines, bar maybe Haaland and Doku.
You mean the instant reaction?
Sorry?
You're such an old man.
So the watch long.
We didn't do a watch along. One of your young people's technology, yes.
The weird part is, I don't think I'm that much older, but still, it goes to the point, old man. But still, I do question, are we the best transition team in the world? I find Doku, Haaland are suitable, kind of contrarian answers if you want to say that. I don't know about Liverpool. For all their attacking prowess in terms of transition, I think that they're a lot more controlled this season. And I would argue that our outlets are more dangerous, more efficient, and more clinical this season than theirs have been. So I struggle to find very many front lines that are as efficient as us. And it really stands well in the Champions League if you can start saying you're one of the better, you're one of the best out of possession teams, but then you're one of the better transition teams in the competition. Those are ingredients for success there.
I think so. And I did see a few comments actually in that watch along, let's just say, saying that, maybe they don't agree that we are the best. And it's because we're not put in that scenario enough, because we're playing so many deep blocks and our fans are used to seeing us play against very deep defences. So we're not used to seeing our counter-attacking potential. But in all 3 of our Champions League games, especially at home, there's 12 goals scored. 4 against PSV were a very good team, 2 against Sevilla, and now 6 against Lens. I did find it intriguing though, being inside the stadium. The Lens fans are very, very hectic. They were, I don't know if you guys saw this, but they were throwing flares at the Arsenal crowd.
They're sort of doing this, they were waving, what's the word, swaying side to side as well.
Yeah, so it might have cut off on TV, but I think when Martinelli scored, he literally went straight over to them. Even Jesus went over to them as well. But from the Martinelli goal, you had Zinchenko pulling him back. I just like the way that Arsenal kind of dealt with that, you know, in a sense of the fans were kind of angering them, but they took it out on the pitch and kept scoring goals. There's a sense of swagger in the Arsenal attack. It was the first time that we'd seen one of, you know, Mikel Arteta's, the Havertz, Odegaard with the Jesus, Martinelli, Saka front three. Alex, how impressed were you?
Yeah, it was amazing. I think the one thing I'd say is, like, I look back at the PSV game, and I think because we didn't know what to expect, it was exciting, but it was also a surprise. But with this game, because we kind of expected, maybe because of the game in France, we were kind of all expecting a bit of a harder game. I think I was expecting maybe a lucky, not lucky win, but, you know, a 2-0, maybe 2-1, like a lot closer margins. So to go and do that was a really, really nice feeling, to sort of blow those expectations out the water where we hadn't had them for PSV. Yeah, I was really impressed. Look, I think there's some games, as I say, that are system games and are games that you want to worry about. Okay, well, how are Arsenal going to break down low blocks, as we're probably going to speak about later, of course, and various things like that. But I think this was a game for the individuals. This was a game where we sat with our front, let's call them our front six, if we're including Declan Rice, the first time, I believe, for Rice, Havertz, Odegaard, Saka, Jesus, and Martinelli to play together and to show the quality. In the end, you know, if we removed all the managers, 9 times out of 10, if you put the best players on the pitch, they're gonna do the business for you, and that's what we have. When we can get our best players on the pitch, put them closer together, put them in a structure that works, they can show you their individual quality, and that's what was so exciting about yesterday. Look, you know, I don't know whether, again, we're going to talk about it later, but Saka, in terms of the numbers that he has, being the highest in Europe for goals and assists in the Champions League so far this season. Martinelli showing the footwork that he did. Jesus, the sharpness. I said on our watch along that I think there's a decent argument that in the Emirates era, I think Jesus is one of our top 5 players. I think on his day, when he's fit and he can lift our attack to the level that we know he can, he is in that Sanchez bracket. He is in that RVP bracket. He is unplayable at times. And yeah, it felt like old Arsenal. It felt like old Arsenal. It felt like sort of Wenger era, when we're popping it around teams and spanking them, you know, on our best days, but with the added solidity that Arteta's brought us.
It's been a theme in most of the Champions League games that we play very attractive football. And it's almost like a reminder each and every time that when fans think we play very boring football, no, we can still play very exciting football when given space and opportunity. And George, this felt like a statement from Arsenal, another one, saying, listen, man, if you give us any sort of space, we're going to rip you apart. And, you know, almost with all the questions about Arsenal in the league and not being fluid in attack, that's not a question in the Champions League. So I think the question now becomes, we've qualified top of the group, we're in the last 16. We've seen the potential position as it stands. Things can change though, but it could be a bit technical. Maybe a PSG potentially different in a second. So how far do you think Arsenal can go in the Champions League? And do you think it's possible with Wembley in June? You know, we might be there.
We will be there.
There we go. I think I've been very high on the potential of this team, ironically, in the Champions League and the cup competitions for the 2 things that we've talked about before in terms of the out-of-possession quality and the transition threat. That's really important in the Champions League, and especially in one-off games. And then when you start to factor in the idea that Arsenal will be getting more space in these games, kind of talked about it on the watch-along, you know, teams like Madrid, Bayern, they aren't going to sit in a low block. They aren't going to be afraid. Big teams meet each other at the halfway line, I like to call it, and they will go at each other. And so the idea that this space will go away is not true as the competition progresses. You're going to get the same amount of space, potentially more, because big teams will have periods of domination against you. We will be forced into a block of our own at times, and there will be space in order to counter. And so I've always felt like we're one of the teams that can win it. This year, I've always said that. I said that the minimum expectation was a semifinal for me. I do acknowledge, on the other hand, how poor our European record is as a club. Not just in this team with Mikel Arteta, by the way, who himself hasn't had the most sterling European reputation, even with his time with us. And of course, there's mitigating factors, but still, on the whole, I still think that we've exited competitions against teams we shouldn't have. And we had the quality to beat them. And then as a club, we just haven't got over the line in Europe, even with our best teams. And so, Freddie Ljungberg was just on Sky Sports talking about how it's one of the biggest regrets of his life, and I would tend to agree. That team, that invincible team, should have won the Champions League. So keeping that in mind, I'm willing to temper this idea that we shouldn't be able to go and win it the first season. But on the other hand, I'm not going to sit there and not talk about the quality that Arsenal have, and they are one of the teams that can win it in this competition. And for me, they're certainly top four, and they're certainly worth a final. Whether we get there, it starts to become intangibles past the semifinal mark, in my opinion. Like all those logic about quality, who should win, kind of goes out the window in those big moments. And factually, this young team, very young team, and of course the debut campaign for Mikel Arteta in the Champions League, there's a lot of factors that have to go right for you to ultimately get that prize. But quality-wise, Bavs mate, like there's no question in my mind that we are one of the most threatening in the competition. And we did send a statement, by the way. We set a Champions League record. We are the first team to score 5 goals unanswered in the first half of a Champions League night. That means something. And, it doesn't mean that we're suddenly the most attacking team and that we're suddenly the team that's going to win it. But it certainly sets a marker, and it does announce ourselves to Europe, certainly. I think we've announced ourselves domestically for quite a while. We've been quite good domestically. But in terms of Europe and European pedigree, I would argue that we've really done well to do that, because Lens aren't a small team. They aren't a team that you would just assume a 5-0 like a Copenhagen, respectfully, or something along those lines. They are a very respectable team in France with, again, one of the best defensive records in Europe. So you don't expect to go nuts on them, So it was a brilliant night, and I will say, I think that we have the potential to win it, whether we do or not, up in the air, but semifinal minimum.
It feels like almost that our young players have a massive point to prove. Saka being one, obviously, but even the likes of Saliba and Martinelli. I think Martinelli's now got a goal or a goal involvement in all 3 of his appearances as well. Jesus is, honestly, in the Champions League like R9. And that's actually pretty ironic, because I don't think R9... He
scored more goals.
Yeah, I don't think R9's ever actually won the Champions League.
He scored more Champions League goals than R9 and Ronaldinho.
It seems like Arteta's entire team, and let's not even you forget about Declan Rice, for example. Man, that guy he's crazy. But it feels like Arsenal's team is kind of built for a Champions League, because we can play in a deep block, we can counter-attack, we can sustain pressure. There's not much Arsenal can't do, especially when you give us space. So, Alex, if we were to face like a Bayern, PSG, Real, those heritage teams in the Champions League, how would you think Arsenal would cope?
Heritage. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it, to be honest. And I actually said this to someone earlier. I think there's a temptation to go, wouldn't it be nice to have a sort of an easy route to the final? Not really. Like, actually, to be honest, okay, sure, it would be nice, but we're going to meet them in the end eventually anyway. So I think I'd rather meet them sooner and understand more about the team sooner rather than later. I think I want to go back to a point that George made earlier in terms of teams meeting each other further up the pitch. I'm really comfortable with coming up against the Bayern or Real Madrid and whatever, because we say those names and they conjure images, right? When you say a Bayern, a Real Madrid, you just think about the club, the stature, the whatever. You don't think about the team as it is, as we sit here right now. And, I look at Real Madrid and they clearly have some absolutely fantastic players. But do I look at Ferland Mendy and fancy Saka against him? Absolutely. Do I look at, Rodrigo and Vinny and think, fantastic players, but do I trust that Saliba maybe and Ben White or whoever comes up against them has, at least a match for them? Absolutely. We are at that level. It's just a case of going, okay, can we go into those games without that sort of monkey on our back going, right, oh God, we're the small team. We're the one who's really going to have to play up here. No. At home, get the light show out, get the crowd going. Like, we could really, really match these teams. And I think the point that George makes in terms of the actual tactical side of the game, there's going to be spaces on the pitch for us to exploit. Now, there's some unbelievable individual quality. But as I say, do I trust our defense? What more do I need to trust our defense? Like, what more evidence do you require to trust that William Saliba, Gabriel Zinchenko, Tomiyasu last night was fantastic? What more qualities do they need to show to prove to you, by being the best defense in the best league in the world, that they are ready to go and challenge those players? I think a lot of what happens is we go, oh, Bayern, Schweinsteiger, Oliver Kahn, like we think like that, rather than going, actually, who's in their team right now? Mm-hmm. What are those individual matchups, and can we do that? And I think we can.
with Timber and Partey yet to return to the supposed defense.
Things will get better. It feels like as well, like Cedric. Our fans have,
we've done this
in general. We like to make things dramatic because we've done it before as well, not just with the big teams, but like Crystal Palace away. Oh my God, it's Selhurst Park away under the lights. Everton away. Like our fans, because of our pain over the last 10 years, it's just become accustomed to us. It's like a habit we've created. It's an annoying habit as well. But I think we're slowly getting out of it, and we're going into games like Man City, etc., and going, no, we can win this game with confidence, with chest, because our team has something serious about it, and it's got a very serious player. Like we're talking a very serious player. Some would say world class. Bukayo Saka.
Everybody
6 or 7.
It's world class. I'm so
7 goal contributions.
Of that caveat.
Yeah, 7 goal contributions in his first 5 ever Champions League appearances. They were questioning, he can't be world class because he's not done in the Champions League. And now they're saying, Lens, PSV, and Sevilla are Europa League teams apparently. So still, he hasn't done it in the Champions League apparently. I mean, he's the highest goal contributor in the Champions League, but he's not done it in the Champions League.
George is fuming.
And then they said he couldn't get the World Cup. He started, I think he had 3 goal contributions, England's highest contributor at the World Cup. When he was taken off against France, the commenters literally said, like, oh my God, why are you taking him off? He's their best player. At Euros, he was one of the man of the match players at 18, 19 years of age. Premier League, we've seen him do it as well. I mean, Alex, because I know George, actually we'll go to George because I know George wants to defend him. Defend Bukayo for me. Why do people, and I'm talking mainly here, less Arsenal fans and people outside of Arsenal, still think Bukayo, or reluctant to say Bukayo is world class?
Thanks for checking out the Cannon Podcast. To hear the full episode, sign up as a YouTube member on this channel or go to patreon.com/thecannonpod.